guys, how's it going? I'm Sydney from PhoneDog.com, and I have here the Pantech Laser from AT&T and the LG Octane from Verizon Wireless. Two great messaging phones. In fact, if you keep up with PhoneDog's top messaging phones list, you'll know that both of these are #1 for their respective carriers. So maybe you're trying to decide which one you should get. Maybe your contract's up. Should you switch to Verizon to get the Octane or to AT&T to get the Laser? Well, this is going to be a dogfight. We're going to compare both of these phones to see which one is better. So again, the Laser is from AT&T, the Octane from Verizon Wireless. I'm Sydney from PhoneDog.com. Let's go check it out. Okay, so here we have the LG Octane on the left and the Pantech Laser on the right. And just in terms of physical design, you can see they're both very different, just in the form factor, but also, you know, in style. The Pantech Laser is extremely thin for having a physical keyboard. In fact, it's the thinnest full-sliding keyboard that's ever been offered on AT&T, whereas the Octane is not really, you know, going to compete in any sort of thinness contest, but it does still have a very stylish design. So the major difference is that the Octane is a clamshell device, so you have just a basic dialing pad on the front, and then you can open it up and you have your full QWERTY keyboard with a main display here, whereas the Laser has just one main display and then the keyboard slides out like we see on most messaging phones. I found that, you know, in terms of form factor, that's really going to be up to you. You can see the Laser is also a little bit taller than the LG Octane. The Laser is about 4.4 inches by 2.3 inches, whereas the Octane is only 4.2 inches by 2.1. So the Laser is just a little bit taller. Then again, the Laser is only about 0.4 inches thick, whereas the Octane is over ½ an inch thick. So this main display that we have on the Laser is a 3.1-inch AMOLED display. It's also a touchscreen. So as you can see, the colors are very vibrant. They look great. And then, of course, having that resistive touchscreen, you can slide around and see the rest of the UI. Great touchscreen, and the colors just, they look great on them. Whereas the Octane does not have a touchscreen. It has this small display here that you really only use for basic functions, you know, dialing or adding a new contact if you like, accessing your music. And then this main display here is a 2.6-inch LCD display. It's just a basic TFT display, so nothing really special about that. And again, it's not a touchscreen, so, you know, a lot of people prefer a touchscreen. Just, you know, maybe it's more fun, it's kind of cooler to have a touchscreen device. Also, the fact that it is an AMOLED display is sort of just an added bonus rather than just a standard display. You do have a D-pad for basic navigating and then 2 soft keys. So again, a lot of that is going to be based on personal opinion, what you want. If you want the touchscreen, you know, for messaging, you won't have to worry about messing with the touchscreen because you do have a physical keyboard. And so we'll get on to both of those and compare them. Here's the Octane keyboard. 4 rows, space bars within a row of letters, and you have your dedicated number row. You have shift function. This is a shortcut to go to messaging, and then this is a shortcut to take you to your favorite contacts. Pretty standard. The keys are pretty plasticky, sort of firm, but, you know, not too bad. I mean, this is a really great keyboard. And then you have the Laser, which is set up a little differently. The keys are more rubbery, whereas on here they were kind of plasticky. These are more rubbery. They're not mushy, they're still pretty firm, but they do have kind of a grippy, tactile feel to them. Then you have dedicated spacebar row with .com, period, comma, function, question mark, your shift key. I really like this keyboard. I mean, they're both decent keyboards, and in testing them out, you know, it's the 2 greatest keyboards on messaging devices these days. But I have to say that I personally prefer the Laser just because it has a dedicated spacebar row, and then it has more shortcut buttons. You have a period key, a question mark key, a comma key, and a .com key, whereas on the Octane you only have the period key, and then you have to use function to get to everything else. Also, the Octane doesn't quite, it has a backspace. You use the clear button for backspace, but it's sort of awkward, it's in a weird place. It doesn't say back, and so you kind of just have to, figure that out, that that's the back button. Whereas here the back button is in the normal place. Also, just for typing, it's more spacious. It's laid out much better, the spaces between the keys. Personally, I really think the Laser's keyboard is much better. And if you ever get your hands on these, you may test it out and feel differently. But just, coming from me, the person that's been testing them out, if you want my opinion, I think the Laser has a better keyboard, but they're both great. It's also worth noting that because the Laser is taller, this also translates into the keyboard being wider. And so here, again, you have 4.4 inches, nearly 4.5 inches of real estate for the keyboard, whereas on the Octane, you only had 4.2 inches to begin with, and then a large chunk of that is taken up with the D-pad, so it's even smaller. So, very detailed analysis, but basically, in my personal opinion, the Laser's keyboard is better, but they're both awesome, and you can test them out if you'd like to. They do both have threaded text messaging, and you can scroll through. Again, the Laser has a touch screen, whereas the Octane, you're going to use a D-pad. But both have threaded text messaging, so that's a very nice feature. Let's move on to the basic UI of each device. The Laser has a very innovative UI that brings a lot of features that we've seen before, kind of does them a little differently, and then it adds a couple of new features. So I'll just show you. Basically, you have 3 screens, one screen for the clock, one for your favorite contacts, and then another screen for shortcuts and widgets. Then you have a dock at the bottom for dial contacts, messages, and then the menu. The Octane is a little bit different. You have the front display, which you can use to get to your messages, to view your messages or send a message, contacts, music, pictures, and then your settings. You can change this theme if you'd like. And then once you open it up, you have the 2 shortcuts for message, contacts, and then you push the OK button to get to the menu. Then you have just your basic standard menu. So, on the Octane, the UI is a little more standard, something that you see on, a lot of messaging phones, just with a main menu, and then you get to your different programs. Whereas on the Laser, just a little more interesting, a little more, I guess, fun. Kind of changes it up a little bit. So, again, that's going to be personal preference. And then you do have the main menu where you can go to all your programs. So both UIs work great. They're both very simple. Neither one of them is overly complicated. It just depends on if you prefer basic standard main menu with all of your items, or something that kind of adds a couple more features and makes it a little more interesting. Now, both of the phones have a camera. The LG Octane has a 3.2 megapixel camera with a focus, and it also has a flash, whereas the Laser has, let me lock the screen, has a 3 megapixel camera, excuse me, with no flash and no focus. And so, specs are about the same. You do have the advantage of the flash on the Octane, but they're both pretty standard cameras. In testing the Octane, it wasn't outstanding. Usually if you have a 3.2 megapixel camera that has a focus and a flash, picture quality is usually pretty great, but I didn't really find that to be true. So, even though the numbers are a little different, the specs are different, I would say the cameras are pretty comparable, except for the fact that the Octane does have a flash. Now, in terms of media, both phones have a micro SD card slot. So you can see there's the one on the Octane. The Octane supports up to 16 gigabytes of memory, whereas the Laser supports up to 32 gigabytes of memory. Now, in order to get to the SD card slot, you have to take off the battery cover. So, more memory, more capabilities on the Laser, but the disadvantage is that the Laser does not have a headphone jack. Because the phone is so thin, there's no headphone jack, no 2.5 or 3.5. You just have this micro USB port at the top that you can buy a set of headphones for, whereas the Octane, it has a 2.5 millimeter headphone jack. So still not, very standard, not the 3.5, but it's definitely better than not having a headphone jack at all, which is what you get on the Laser. Now, whenever you talk about pricing, the Laser is on AT&T, the Octane is on Verizon, and they're both the same price, $99.99 on contract for both phones. And I think the Laser is definitely worth the $99.99. You get a lot. You get a very stylish device. You have the AMOLED display. It's a touchscreen. You have a great physical QWERTY keyboard. The Octane, I'm not quite sure if I would want to pay $99 for it, because it's still it has sort of an outdated design. The UI is something that's been around for a long time. It's something that we've seen for a while, and just not a lot of updates to it. And so and then it's kind of bulky. It has a very stylish design, but it's still kind of bulky. And then again, the UI is something that we've seen for a couple of years now, whereas the Laser is very fresh and very different. So that's my personal opinion. I think that the Laser is worth $99. I don't really think the Octane is worth it, but you may feel it differently. But they are both the same price, $99 on contract. So that is pretty much it, guys. The LG Octane from Verizon Wireless and the Pantech Laser from AT&T. And you can be the judge. You decide which one you would prefer. They both have plus and minuses. They both have pros and cons. They both have great physical QWERTY keyboards. I happen to prefer the Laser, but they both have great physical keyboards. The Laser is extremely thin, which is pretty cool, but it may not be a big deal to you. And then you do get the flash with the Octane. So just little things like that, and you can decide which one matters to you. In terms of network performance, a lot of that is going to depend on where you are. AT&T may not have great coverage where you're at. Verizon may not have great coverage where you're at. But call quality is a lot going to depend on just coverage in your area. So you guys can decide, but thank you so much, guys, for watching. Be sure and check out PhoneDog.com for more news, updates, and reviews. Also, check out PhoneDog's Facebook page, where you can enter to win one of 100 iPads and 2 tickets to the 2011 Super Bowl. If you'd like to, you can follow me on Twitter. My screen name is It's My Job to Know, so you can come and ask any questions, and I'll try my best to answer them. So thanks again for watching. I'm Sydney from PhoneDog.com, and I'll see you guys later.